I'm going to try and go live. Hello, and welcome to Sunday Evening Chats. My name is John Muntz. Every Sunday, I'm going to try and have a different guest, and we'll talk about like Freemasonry, and from a, depending on the guest, from whatever their standpoint is. So tonight, my guest is Worshipful brother Carl J. Schwartz. He goes by Joey. He is the Worshipful Master of Trenton-Wyandotte Lodge number 8 in Trenton, Michigan. Welcome, Joey. How are you doing?
Good, brother. How are you?
Pretty good. This being like the second episode of this, just trying to get everything set up and a little bit more smooth. So, like I said, I want to try and have little chats about, individual brothers' perspectives. I'm in my 50s, you're in your later 20s.
Yep.
And, we're from different generations. And so we each have a little different view. Both of us being from the same lodge, which maybe I should have said that earlier, so this is my Worshipful Master for this year. I am a past master of Trenton-Wyandotte Lodge number 8.
Times 2.
Yeah, times 2. So I thought for my first guest, it'd be really fitting to be my current Worshipful Master. So, Worshipful, why don't you kind of talk about your Masonic journey? I know that you were D-Malay.
Yeah.
I have never been, part of that organization. So, if you could just talk about your journey a little bit, maybe the differences in between, the structure and just how the feel of D-Malay is as opposed to Masonry.
So, in general, the two biggest differences between D-Malay and a regular Masonic Lodge, realistically, is just an extra 6 months, because a term in D-Malay only lasts 6 months on a local level. A state term lasts a full year, and much more money. I will say, having been a 5-time past master counselor of my local chapter, it's much harder to convince a bunch of grown men to do things as it is teenagers or young men. But I was in D-Malay from 2007 to 2015. I was actually able to stay a year longer than I was supposed to, because I was installed as a state officer before my 21st birthday. So I was able to fulfill that term. Ritual-wise, structure is just about the same. There's a few varying different positions. For instance, the guard at the outdoor we call a Tyler. In D-Malay it's called a sentinel. The three main positions that we would call wardens and the master are counselors. And there's a core of advisors, grown men who are predominantly Masons, that stick around and make sure we don't kill ourselves or do anything illegal. Other than that, it's still the same. We have degrees just like Lodge does, 2 as opposed to 3. But our second degree is very much. We have degrees just like Lodge, and its symbolism and importance to a brother's journey on their path. There's really not much difference.
Okay. So, I like you said, yeah, there is a little, I think, reluctance with some of the older guys that they don't really help, unfortunately, as well as the young men and women of some of our other our child bodies. You know, I have been very you know in awe of how you during the last few months being able to get the help from these young men and women, and they show up, they go and do everything that's asked of them, which I think is great.
We have a really good group of officers, both a mix of young and old, and I think that's so important for the success and future for any lodge that hopes to live past, the year that we're in. The last few years, worldwide for Masonic fraternities in general have just been extremely difficult. If you look at it from a youth group perspective, because the world's been shut down like it has, they haven't been able to go out and fundraise and, try and grow their organizations as they normally would if we wouldn't be under these restrictions. And to a certain extent, the same thing is with the Masonic lodges themselves. We haven't been able to go out and do all the things we would have liked to have normally done. We've had to be careful with who we bring around the lodge just because we don't want to risk, outbreaks of any disease of any kind currently going on. But the mix between both young and older officers is extremely important because there's a plethora of knowledge to learn from past masters and old timers, and even the brothers that, let's say, haven't darkened the door of a lodge in 3, 4, 5 years. If they were to show up once, I'm sure there'd be plenty of questions for not only me but other officers to ask. I think it's extremely important that there's a good mix of that. And, and you'll attest to this, fortunately, we were lucky enough for a very long time to have, a brother by the name of Bruce in our presence, who was just a whirlwind of knowledge from an ant on the ground to the stars in the sky. I mean, that brother could talk about anything and know quite a bit about it.
Right. Yeah, Bruce was actually a very big part of my life, even before Masonry. He was a ham radio operator like me.
Yep.
There were several of us that I knew, these guys, even before, I ever walked through the door of the Trenton Temple. So, he definitely had a lot of knowledge and has been missed ever since he passed away. God, now about 2 years ago.
Yeah, he has been missed.
Yeah. So, like I said, is that we have an age difference, and what do you think is attractive or can be attractive to younger men for them to want to join the lodge?
I think it's all within what you just said. Men. Without getting into anything, too political, I think, we live in a world where there are certain restrictions on what a man is and cannot be, based on varying opinions from all walks of life. But with Lodge, it being a men's fraternity, you get that camaraderie, you get that sense of belonging. You get to sit down with the same kinds of individuals or not the same kinds of individuals and hear a variety of opinions from all different places and backgrounds. And I think that is one of the most specific things that men in today's world are looking for. Everything is so, um, I guess a good way to put it would be family oriented. And while Masonry has a plethora of family oriented events and to dos like that, um, we know on Lodge Night, it's just us. Come down, let loose a little bit, unwind from, the weeks of struggles, and just to be able to sit down with our brothers and our friends and be able to just relax and talk amongst ourselves without having to worry about what it is someone else in the world may or may not think. I think that plays a large part into it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing is that after all these years, I still cannot wait for Wednesday nights to come and hang out with you guys, and I think that is really big at Trenton-Wyandotte. We're not those, we're not one of those once a month lodges. Then you just close the doors right after your meeting. We are active. We have something going every Wednesday night.
That we do. That we do. And it's a very good thing that we do. Because unfortunately, you see it all the time. Once a lodge stops doing something 1 week, it can kind of just cause a trickle effect. And then before you know it, lodge is closed.
Yeah. Yeah, and unfortunately with the amount of membership loss in Masonry as a whole, and especially in rural areas, yeah, it's harder for these smaller lodges to keep going. I mean, we're lucky enough to have a little bit over 200 members, but yet, when you think about it, at best we have a 5%, maybe 7% turnout on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a lodge, like let's say up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, let's say they have 40 members. Now they also have only 5% show up. They're dead.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, that's unfortunately it's just the way that it is right now. It seems like we've been steadily falling since what, probably 58.
Yeah,
membership.
about that time.
And it's just, it's hard to recover, and especially with the rules that you're not supposed to actively try and recruit people. We're the only fraternal organization that actually doesn't go out and try and get people to join. Okay. The old, to be one, ask one type of a thing, which is, there's a lot of people that actually don't realize that, we're not allowed to invite you. You have to ask.
Yeah.
We had a brother, unfortunately he has since passed away, but he was up at the temple helping at every breakfast and different spaghetti dinners and stuff, and he didn't understand why we never asked him to join. Then once he figured it out, or was told basically that we can't ask, you have to ask us. Well, then he became a member, and he was pretty active until, unfortunately, he passed away at quite a young age.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's just something that a lot of people don't realize. I tried to explain in like the pilot episode of this is that one of the requirements of masonry is that you have to believe in a higher power.
Correct.
And that's another thing that I have realized in, you know, the a little bit younger, let's say 40 on down or whatever, is that people are getting more spiritual rather than religious.
I would agree wholeheartedly. And so I guess me personally, right? I definitely would fall into that category. I don't. I'm not a member, let's say, of any one particular organized religion. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe in so many of the wonderful things that the Bible can teach us. I believe in a lot of great things that the Torah and the Quran can teach us as well. I think there's only two actual, let's say, readily available religious texts that I haven't read in the course of my life. And I think in today's world you find a lot more people willing to go through them individually and figure out what it is they like from each of those teachings and try to put them into practice in their own lives, as opposed to going every Sunday to a brick and mortar building and listening to a guy who's supposed to be the bringer of the word, ordained by, the Lord himself, telling you what it is you need to believe and do. And I think a lot of those reasons, especially from my generation, politics is very influential in that, based on what you hear religious leaders today speak about. I think growing up in the time that we did, there was a lot of religious leaders who just spouted, the doom and gloom kind of thing all the time, which is what I experienced in my life. And you just see more people willing to accommodate their faith in that way, as opposed to going to a building every Sunday to listen to somebody. Me personally, my faith comes from my heart and my mind. I know what it is that I believe. I don't need anybody else to believe me when I say that. I don't need to convince anybody else when I say that. Hopefully, and if the time comes, and hopefully it's a long way away, when it's my time to go, hopefully I'll be able to walk up to the pearly gates and be allowed in, because I've lived my life accordingly and right in some shape, way, or form. I don't necessarily know if this trend would continue, years down the road. Just like all trends, they ebb and flow. I certainly could see, the organized faith becoming much more prominent again, as it used to be. But I think there has to be some kind of change in the way it's taught in order for that to happen.
Right. Well, so what, we talked about like your kind of journey in a way from, and like about DMLA and stuff. What actually got you interested in masonry? I mean, why did you join?
My family. Grew up with a father, a grandfather, and several uncles who were all Masons. The first time I asked to go to lodge, I was 5 years old. That is my earliest memory that I haven't been told about. That's the earliest thing I can remember doing. Certainly my family has filled me in on things I did when I was younger than that, growing up, but that was the first thing that comes to mind. I just wanted to go to lodge like my dad did. And when I turned 19 in Michigan, that was at the time the legal age in order to be able to join. It's since dropped down to 18. Filled out a petition, and away we went. But it was all to do with my family. It's been a family thing, certainly all of my life. and, going farther back than that. I mean, there wasn't a week that went by when I was growing up that we didn't have some sort of Masonic function that we were going to, or going over to, friends' houses who were Masons, and, wives of, families of, that kind of thing. Um, it was always the number one goal in life. I mean, some people want to be rich and successful. Some people want to be the president. Some people, want to fly into space, whether as an astronaut or like Jeff Bezos. My goal in life was to be a Mason, because that's what I've always wanted.
Yeah, first of all, I think it's a great organization. I mean, of course, a lot of people say, "Oh, yeah, of course you'll say that," but I think it was one of the greatest decisions I ever made in my life. I have made, you know, great friends. And these are guys that I can count on at a moment's notice if I had a need. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. We are a very tight knit band of men.
Absolutely. The words we speak to each other on a weekly basis bond us tighter and tighter as time goes on. And that's not to say that we always agree on things when we discuss them or debate them. That's not to say that we don't have, dust ups from time to time. But the fact that we're brothers and the words that we say to each other mean something more than just face value is the reason why we come back and why our bond grows stronger all the time.
Right. Well, that was basically what I was going to try to cover for this week. I was hoping to get about 30 minutes, but this is at about 25. So I would like to thank you for your time, and also being here a little bit earlier to help me make sure that Zoom was working exactly the way that I needed it to. So, with that, I think I'm gonna, I'll be able to let you go, and I will see you at least on Wednesday.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you have a good rest of your Sunday.
You too, brother. Thank you.
Okay, bye. Okay, so, hopefully, we can start getting more and more, uh, guests to come on. I will have another episode at 6 o'clock next Sunday. Um, so until next time, God bless